I'm happy to have you. It took me a while to get hold of you, but thank God you're finally here. You're a busy man, David.
Well, thanks for having me. First of all,
Yeah,
like it's you know how it goes in this country.
right, I know.
So
You don't have to tell me.
bills on bills on bills on bills.
So before we start, I would like you to do a brief introduction of yourself. That's how you usually start. So tell some people who you are, so you can set the background for the conversation.
So my name is David Adeniyi. Of course, originally from Nigeria, born and bred in Nigeria, been here for in America for approximately 10 years so far.
Man, that's huge.
Yeah. I worked in the capacity at UIC as in preclinical biomedical research.
Nice. So really, today's conversation is going to be centered around what I think our society has developed into. Some people may have different opinion about this topic, but I know that for someone who is, are you a millennial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I know that you have, I would just say you've lived both worlds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but before we even get into the topic for conversation today is redefining strength in a sensitive world, right? So, and the question is, do you think we are becoming too soft as a society? There's so many things happening. How we were raised and how people are raised right now
Mm-hmm.
is so different.
Mm-hmm.
The values that we held growing up is not the values that are being held right now, because some things are just changing, right? So, and the question is, as a society, you've been you were raised like in those time 1990s,
Mm-hmm.
and up in 1990s,
Mm-hmm.
and up until right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think our society is becoming too soft? But before you answer that question, give me your perspective. How were you raised? Like, was it tough love or soft love? Because of course we have soft love, we have tough love. So how was it for you in the household? How were you raised?
So I was raised in a very traditional Nigerian family.
Right.
Both parents at home, and they both have unique roles as parents. My mom, she saddled with the responsibility of very feminine, role, and very motherly role.
Yeah.
Taking care of the kids. My mom is kind of different too, in a way that she's also the disciplinarian. My dad is the quiet type. He's not the one to bother you, and it gives you a chance to express yourself.
So you got the chance to be expressive as a child, like whatever thing you wanted to say.
But then I had my mom who would always clamp down on that.
Oh, okay.
So it was more tough love.
Okay.
Growing up.
Yeah.
At some point my dad was away because he was in the Nigerian military. So we moved around a lot. I was born in Bauchi State, in the north.
Right.
Because we lived in barracks, and
no, if you live in barracks, it must be tough love.
yeah, I mean that's the stereotype, but it's not always like that. Because my dad was a soldier, but he was this soft type.
Oh, okay.
He was the one who it's not like the strong disciplinarian.
Yeah.
He has a way of disciplining, right? But it's not like the stereotypical way you expect a soldier man.
Yes, to be. Yeah, the idea that we have about.
But he also has, his way of asserting himself and making sure you stay disciplined. So my mom is the one who spell the role or spoil the child.
Right.
She would whoop your ass real bad.
So in all of that, did you find yourself being molded towards being more expressive or being soft? So
I found myself being actually my voice being suppressed.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's what when you don't allow kids to express themselves.
Yeah.
They suppress them.
So you just suck it up.
Yeah, you just suck it up. And when you grow up, you don't even know how it feels to be you. This. So it doesn't allow those inherent personality
Right.
within you to find expressions because that expression has been suppressed. Because they're trying to mold you to fit into what they think is right, you know. But but the world is changing. What was right during that time when the world isn't as small as this.
Right.
Now the world is small. With your phone, you can connect to everywhere, right? So when the world was still closed, when Africa was still during colonial rule,
right,
maybe that
mentality, yes,
would have been more effective, And that's why when I was working at UIC, I couldn't draw the line between. So I saw young people who I'm actually older than. They talk very confidently because
they built it from, yes.
They've allowed them to be expressive. So now when they go out, they can be much more assertive. But I don't have that. And I struggle to assert myself because I didn't grow up asserting myself. So I don't know how to navigate that. And you find me, my voice being suppressed all the time. Even when I try to be assertive, it doesn't come out right. It comes out like you're weak, like you're doing it, but you're not doing it in a very confident way. So people just try to walk over you.
I feel like this is what most people actually pass through. Like most people,
most Africans.
I would say yes, yeah. But regardless of that, we also see people that are bold. So people are inherently bold. So when they give it to you, this is not a question of whether you are being taught to be bold. I mean, naturally you are a bold person. There are people like that. But I also feel that part of the reason why we have become who we are, except those people that have unlearned and relearned, like, you've had to teach yourself to be bold, because of exposure and because of association, because of the things that you've seen and heard, you've watched, you've read. Now you've taught yourself how to be bold. But I think that part of the reason that people are still in this circle of trying to find their voice in this life that will challenge you every time to speak about who you are, right? And then you see yourself getting to the hole. Part of that reason is the training that we had growing up, and I think it's still affecting people. But I just would want us to, I would like you to compare it with what is going on right now. So, but do you think that compared to what we used to have and what we have now, do you think that love, that training has changed? Like the training pattern has changed, and then people are more confident now, or people are finding their voices more. What is it for you?
So charity begins from home, right? So if you say we are the children and the leaders of tomorrow, you build leaders from home because charity begins from home. If you build followers by silencing their voice and not even allowing them to express something, like not everything a child says is wrong.
Right.
But there's this culture of this is how our forefathers did it, and it has to go. But this is forefathers in the 18th century, but this is 21st century. That's not gonna cut it in this present day and age. So I feel like in this present day and age, right? I think it depends on your financial, your class in the society in Africa. It depends on your level of exposure that will determine how you're being raised. Right?
So are you saying that
what predominates now? I feel like people from a very low social class. Sometimes you even look at you see a parent disciplining their child, right? Maybe the background of everything that transpired before the discipline. You don't know if the mom or the dad who's disciplining this child are they actually correcting this child, or they are
killing some potential,
or they are just angry.
Okay.
And they're just taking their anger on this child.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I feel like parents need to process their emotions. Am I angry and just want to take my anger on this child, or I'm correcting this child? Because oftentimes they feel, and oftentimes it's because you're pouring out your anger. It's so because you don't know how to process your emotions, and you can't even hold back everything. You want to take the big stick and just beat up this child, I don't think that way of raising a child is effective, because um, the child gets more recalcitrant, stubborn.
Yeah.
Then you suppress his voice, and it goes out there. It can't even be expressive in the way we would like to be.
So someone can argue that, oh, how can you be saying this? Were we not raised like that? Have we not turned out to be better people in society? So someone can argue that tough love, tough love is better than soft love.
Okay.
Because we were raised, I mean, I know that majority of our people were raised with tough love, really. I'm not saying that tough love is doesn't have its downside, but I also think that it has its good side, for obvious reasons, right?
Everything has its own.
Yeah. So now the issue now is this: people that have refused, like some of the millennials, that are doing the part of our parents, like the part where they are also using tough love, to treat their kids, even though the kids of today are different. They're Gen Zs, they're alphas, and they're all those other people. So it's hard for you to try to use that method of raising children in the olden days to try to raise a child in the moment.
Yeah.
So, but then do you think that people that also focus on soft love alone, because what we have right now is more like people that have been raised with soft love.
Right.
Do you think that is doing more harm than good?
I mean, it's hard to like gauge, right? Like, it's everything. Like, this conversation is nuanced. It depends on who you're asking.
Yeah.
I was raised with tough love, and I wouldn't advocate it, actually.
But you have cousins, you have people around you that you.
I have most people around me are raised with. Most Africans are raised with. So I'm saying it depends on your level of exposure and your financial class. Most people who came from like a very uppity background,
Yeah.
they raise their kids with soft love, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are much more emotionally in tune with their child. They pay more attention. They explore different means of disciplining a child.
Yeah.
As opposed to using a big stick. You can be, oh, you're not going for your vacation. You will be say you never going to see outside Nigeria. So you understand. So like the point I am now, I think I would raise my kids differently than how I was raised.
How would you raise your kids?
I think what a child needs is time. When you're raising a child, when kids are very impressionable, right? You can mold them to fit into however you want them.
Yeah.
Right? And the molding doesn't have to do with when you're using a big stick. You're using a big stick, or you're always like, you're really like castigating them.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, like, what is it castigating? Because studies have shown that kids who are always castigated,
yeah.
And comparing them with people and all that, they have low self-esteem.
Mm.
It creates a sort of complex in them that they will probably have to deal with for the rest of their life. I think when you spend time with a child, when in those years, those are formative years when they are growing and they are highly impressionable, you just not spending time, instructing them what to do. You listen to them.
Right.
They're part of the decision. They make a decision like, okay, you know what? I see what you said. These are 2-year-old.
You acknowledge what they're saying.
You acknowledge them.
Yes.
I understand what you said, but how about you do it this way? No, you can't do that. This is how you're gonna do it. You get my point.
Yeah, well,
so they're way so to raise a child, you spend time with them. It's like you spend time with them on your phone. They're doing their own thing. You're bonding.
Right.
So you're creating that level of comfortability where they see you as a father, as a role model. Children actually learn better when you do something and they model their life after you. You can't tell them to do A, B, C, and D, and you're doing Z, X, Y, Z. Like, it's contradictory. They'd be like, why is that telling me to do this and he's doing something else? So I think soft love, like I said, it's nuanced. Like, it depends on your approach.
Right.
But spending quality time with your kid, and those time you're spending with them, you guys are conversing, and you training them. You tell them, like, okay, take for instance, if I want my child to be a doctor, right? I'm not just gonna not spend time with my child and I'm doing whatever, and when they reach that age in high school, like, now I want to be a doctor. No, when the child is young, in those formative years,
Right.
you bind the paraphernalia of those hearts with the human body. You guys are talking together. You putting them through. You're going for events, symposium that borders around the medical line.
Yeah.
By the time they get to high school, they say, "Dad, I want to be a doctor." You don't even have to tell them because you've molded them. So you just sit your leg and cross your leg like, I know, I know what I did. But you know what I'm saying? So that's how I say it, like, there's a systematic way. Let me tell you something. The titles like doctors, lawyers, and president, they are great titles. But to be called a dad is the greatest title there is.
Right.
And if you fail in that department as a man, I don't care how much money you have, you fail forever. So, and because you don't want to fail, you have to put in the time it takes.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be hard. It's tough, But what kids need is your time. If you want them to do the dishes, you buy a stove. As you're washing it, you guys are bonding, you're talking.
Yeah.
They're raising it, you're putting them through. So they're used to that. You're raising them the right way. So that's kind of like, it's kind of tough, but it's the approach is kind of like soft in a way,
Right.
But so you have to be, I don't know, you get my point, right?
I do.
So I would say soft love is probably a better way to approach it.
Soft love. Okay,
Yeah.
you say soft love. Now, I know you talked about sometimes the things that we pass through in the hands of our parents were not because of the fact that they were tough, really, but because they were angry at some things and they were to talk.
Let me buttress that point.
Yeah.
Your parents don't only pass down the genes to you.
Right.
Some people pass down trauma.
Good. That's a good point.
Because they've not done the work to heal.
Right.
Or they've not actually compartmentalized who they're supposed to be healed and who they are traumatized.
Right.
So if you're not able, like me, like everybody has to deal with trauma, right? I don't know what your background is. I don't know what you went through growing up. You probably have something you're dealing with.
Right.
But you should be able to identify those things and you're working on those things actively so that you don't pass it down. Even though you're doing the work, therapy or whatever, however you're approaching it, and you're not healed, unless you want to be in denial.
Right.
We know ourselves, right? You're not healed. You just want to make sure you compartmentalize that, and you make sure that doesn't like blow up inside you into like a very traumatic, feeling inside you, and it just boils up into like an emotion that you transfer on your kids, So parents have to be careful so they don't pass down the trauma they got from the previous generations and onto their kids.
Right. So that's
we don't talk about mental
point. That's a good point you've made, and I was going to come to that. You know how we've talked about tough love, how we were taught to man up. Everybody square up.
Right.
You're not taught to be vulnerable.
Oh, yeah.
You're not taught to be vulnerable, right?
Right.
Now, if you are saying that people are traumatized, which is actually very true.
Right.
And the problem, the bigger problem is even when you do not realize that you're traumatized.
Oh, yeah.
When you have no idea where your problem is coming from, why you're acting the way you're acting.
Yeah.
And therapy is not something that we're used to back home, right?
Right.
But even here, that therapy is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, do you do therapy?
Mm-hmm.
Does it work?
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about it.
So when I came to America, I was going through a lot, but I'm very grateful for my experience in America. Tough, hard, but I wouldn't want to have it any other ways, because it makes me, like, most of my position on things has changed. Like the other day we were having Bible studies, and I'm not talking because I'm joking.
Yeah.
I mean those things, and I have conviction in those things.
Yeah.
And I believe in those things. So I had to go see this guy, Dr. Leon, very unassuming guy. I walked in his office, like 70-something-year-old man. He had like long beards, like all like gray, like goatee very long.
Yeah.
And he had like twisted, and like a rubber band around it. It looks like an herbalist, and you see nothing. but I could tell like he has like wealth of wisdom.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So we started the therapy, right? The first day is introduction, talking to me. So he gave me some assignment to go do at home. I got home, I did the assignment and everything. So I think this was the third appointment. and he told me his story. His story was my story. His triumph was going to be my triumph.
Was that a coincidence?
It was a coincidence because I never knew he was an immigrant.
Oh.
He told me how he came to this country from Guyana, and how he got in through Miami, and what he went through, his experience, and how he suffered a lot. How he would go wash dogs to make a living, right? But he has to be in class shortly after his shift in the morning, and he goes to his class. He's like smelling like dog. Nobody wants to sit next to him. You know, the reason for him to be in status, he has to be in school. So he has all these like degrees and degrees and degrees. But eventually he got his green card. And for the first time he got married, he went and got back to Guyana, right? When he got to Guyana, so he took his wife. Her name is Joyce. I'm not gonna forget. It's a very good guy. You should go. I would tell him about you so you can go see him. And it says in Guyana, took his wife. His wife is American. That they married here and took him home. Just like Michael going home with his wife for the first time.
Yeah.
And they went to they said when he landed in Guyana, the whole town he came from came to like visit him. Came to welcome him in the airport.
Yes.
He felt like a king. And remind you, this is like in the 70s, right? And they were beating the drum, and his wife was so proud that wow, because here in America, a black man don't have such reception. Like,
right.
Nobody cares about you. Nobody gives two shit about you as a black man. And then in Guyana, a black man meant something to his people, and she felt proud. And so they went to a restaurant to eat, right? As they were eating, so they finished eating, and it tipped the waiter.
Yeah.
The same standard it would tip in America.
Yeah.
Just imagine how much money he's giving to that guy.
Yeah.
So the guy looked at the bill, and like, sir, you made a mistake. And like, no, that's for you. This is a grown-ass man. As a waiter. So the guy burst into tears. Like, if I think the girl was crying, like, this is what I will get paid in the next like 6 months. That's what you tipping me? And that's when my therapist started crying too. Because he said that's when everything made sense, that if you had stayed in Guyana, you probably would have ended up as a waiter. And now he's able to tip someone, like, because then the girl I was seeing, then she was saying, oh, I can go back to Africa, this, that. And he was like, no, you don't understand what these people are going through. That's my story. I know what I went through here in America, but when I went back home, I feel like a king. So therapy is very effective. It makes you vulnerable. You talk about everything. Like in Africa, like you don't have the space to be you. And that's what I'm saying. Like growing up, you're not very expressive.
Yeah.
They just shut up, follow. This, you have to be strong, but the strength in being vulnerable. Not everybody can be vulnerable.
Right.
Because people see it as weakness. But when you search deep and process those emotions, just let it out. It's a very liberating and freeing experience. I think you should.
So now, don't you think that, I know you've talked about this therapy thing, it's so good, and of course we've heard stories of people that, there are so many therapists everywhere, and we've also seen good stories about how effective it has been. Mm-hmm. But do you think as a society, where we are coming from, we're coming from these emotionally unavailable people,
right,
to emotionally vulnerable people,
right?
It's like light and day,
right?
Don't you think we are over emotional, right? Like in our recent time, don't you think our society has become too emotionally available or emotionally vulnerable? Because judging from where we're coming from to where we are right now, don't you think that there is no longer a balance? But we need to strike a balance between being emotionally available and being over emotionally vulnerable.
Okay. So
don't you think we are at that stage where everybody wants to let out? You are oversharing, you are over vulnerable, and people can actually take advantage of you and all those things.
I know.
What do you think about that?
And that's why. So when I go with Nigerian guys, right, and Nigerians, right, I see a group of guys whose guards are up, and that in itself is an anomaly. It's not normal.
Really?
Because
why do you think so?
Because you were raised in that society to be emotionally guarded. Doesn't mean it's the way to live. Look at Africa. Come on, man. I think if people are trained in the right way, where they have a safe space and they can confide in someone, to just be vulnerable with, like I said, it's a very liberating experience. You know, someone you can share, you can share your bodies. So someone that can just listen to you.
I mean, it doesn't mean we don't have people. We have friends that we talk to. We have people that we share our burdens with. We have so just because it's not a traditional therapy session doesn't mean that we don't have people that we talk to and and talk to share our problems with.
Right.
Right. It doesn't mean so, but the idea of making it something that is part of our lives, that we have become so vulnerable in this part. I just feel that we are doing too much of it.
Okay, so I think earlier you talked about emotional vulnerability.
Yes.
And emotional
Unavailability.
Yeah. So to be emotionally available is being emotionally in tune with your emotions and the person you're dealing with.
Right.
You know, and that's why in marriages, right? Especially if you want to marry someone from here, most Africans struggle with being having that emotional
Availability, yeah.
Because some people don't even know their own emotions because they've not been given the safe space to be able to process their emotions and understand what it feels like to have an emotion, right? So if you don't know that, how are you going to know that you need to be present emotionally for your spouse or who you're dealing with, right? So, and it all starts from being being emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, especially your spouse. I feel like you have a spouse here in America, you have to be emotionally vulnerable. Now, that in itself could be dangerous because if you're vulnerable, then
people are going to
you can be taken advantage of.
That's why you're being overexposed.
Yes. I know. But that's why you need to understand who you're dealing with and know that you confide in them and you trust them and you can be emotionally vulnerable towards them because you know that come what may,
they're gonna guide you. They're gonna protect you.
Yeah, you're gonna be protected. Even though you guys might have differences and stuff, but because you confide in them, it doesn't mean that they would use that against you.
Yeah,
you understand. So yeah, I feel like here in America, people tend to share a lot more than they should.
Yeah, I just feel that we are overexposed by the things that we say and do every day. Because I mean, I don't have a problem with being emotionally available. I don't have a problem with therapy. I don't have a problem with, but I just feel that those things in themselves, there needs to be boundary, right? I mean, talking to somebody is okay, but at the same time, like you said, it's easy to be taken advantage of if you are emotionally overexposed.
Right.
And that is why I just think that it's important that there has to be a balance between being emotionally available and that being.
I think having this one, like I said, having the one person that you can confide in and you feel emotionally safe.
Yeah.
That they won't toy with your emotions, right? But I get your point. You can't always be emotionally,
overexposed. Yeah.
Because then you're more susceptible to like threats, attack, or being taken advantage of.
Right.
And it's a sad world. It's not supposed to be like that, but
it is.
But it is what it is right now. Yeah. Most African, especially African men, don't even understand emotional vulnerability and emotional availability.
Yeah, that's why I also think that
most marriage, especially African married African Americans, suffer a lot because some cues they can't even get it. Their guards are up. It's about making money and all. Sometimes like when you calm down and just like process your emotions. Why do you think? Part of the reason why I think most of Africans don't live as people, the life expectancy in Africa is kind of short compared to America or the Western world. Is that we bottle a lot inside. Instead of you to like share some of those burden with some people that you confide in, the mental health is not existent in Africa. In Nigeria, like I would say that, so because unlike you contracting like COVID, there's a virus, they can go test and they will say, oh, we see the COVID virus. Emotions is abstract, so and when you have emotional scars, like trauma, like anxiety.
Right.
Those things don't have like, they don't have, they're intangible. You can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways you can heal from emotional problems is through therapy. And therapy could be preventative in the sense that you're emotionally whole and everything.
Yeah.
But
So we're just trying to do
because you keep going and you keep doing it, so that
you prevent things from happening that would make you
So it's better to
prevent it than try to cure it. Yes.
So yeah, but like I said, no matter what, you still have to deal with something.
Now the thing about therapy is, now it's not enough for you to have someone that you talk to. The environment they're going to go back to after you talk to the person has to be something that will also help promote what you are talking to the person about.
Right.
So for instance, if you're dealing with something
right,
and you have stepped out of your comfort zone to talk to somebody about it, and the person tells you all these things, all these good things that you need to hear, how to do this and that, and then you go back to that same environment, it's not going to be easy to come up from that circle.
Right.
So I think that's what our problem is back home, basically. So if you are saying everyone needs therapy, or most people need therapy in Nigeria or back home in Africa, the environment is already structured in a way that even with your therapy, right, it's as if it's not working. So and that is why I also think that people consistently toe that path of let me use that expression of tough love, for instance, in raising kids, in dealing with people, and in trying to bottle up everything that happens within them. I mean, it's, even though you have people you talk to, you're still going to come back to that same environment that is toxic, that is unapproachable, that is all those environment that is antithetical to whatever thing that you're working on, trying to overcome.
Right.
So that's a huge problem.
So yeah, that's a huge problem. You're right. But that's why, like, when you go to therapy, so my ex, right, she goes to therapy, and she's been through some traumatic experience in her life, like being taken advantage of, right? And I could see that her guards are up, So in a therapy session, the therapist guide her in how to react to things,
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to say no. So she used to tell me no a lot of the times. I'm like, I don't know, I'm just tired of hearing this no. She'll say no first, and then she'll allow it to like simmer in her head before she gives it okay. She can still say the same no if it doesn't make sense to. If she's gonna make her go back to old ways, she will say no. So I think that's what therapy does. They help you, they guide you, they guide you in life. They give you like some skills to coping mechanism, or to navigate the environment you find yourself.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, we're in Africa where nobody will respect your private space. If you don't want to talk, like, no one talk, it didn't worry you.
Right.
Nobody understand that sometimes you just want to be by yourself. Nobody understand that, okay, it's your life, you have the prerogative to say, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It doesn't mean they're bad people. You just have to respect what they want at that moment. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the whole society. So it's a different society, and we have a long way to go to begin to remake and re-engineer our society. Because when I came here, I began to understand a lot of things. That, okay, even if I don't want to come to church, and I shouldn't be judged by that. That I'm a bad person because I say, oh, Christianity is not part of who we are. That's not our civilization. And I was able to support my point. I don't think I'm a bad person, but that there could be people who are like, oh, I don't want to be his friend anymore because he's not a Christian, or he's a bad person, or he's doing juju now. You know what I'm saying? Like, so but here you can say that, like, yeah, I don't understand what you're doing, but I respect your decision. And you know what? We bond over like bowling. We can still go out to bowl. We can still go out, travel together. You know what I'm saying? We don't have that in Africa. Is that, I think it's part of all the whole emotion, just being, how will I put it? Yeah, it's crazy.
So let me ask you, what do you think, like, what do you think toughness means to you? Like, physically, mentally, what does it mean for someone to be tough? So, for instance, if you see someone who people, so there are certain features that someone can display or have, and they'll be like, this person is tough.
Yeah.
But I think that toughness in its own self is usually like it's changing. Like the things that represent toughness is changing.
Right.
So someone maybe in the past someone that is able to stand on their opinion, or someone that is strong physically can be regarded as someone that is tough. But what does toughness mean in our present time?
I think for me, personally, I would say toughness is being resolute, on your principles, even, and also be open to and malleable to change that happens around you. Like take for instance, right? I fast, I pray, I do all those things, but then I begin to I begin to get different facts. For the longest time, I was like, man, how can I just forsake and just not believe in what I've always practiced all my life? But I just took that stance, because when the fact changes, your position has to change. It doesn't matter if it's something that would you inherit from your ancestors. When the fact changes, your position has to change, and I just switch like that.
So you're
and
saying
I'm
that
able to express that.
So you're saying that being tough is you can hold your opinion at one end and also be open to change at any time. So it doesn't mean that you are always seen or in this light.
So you hold your opinion and you're progressive in your thinking, right?
Okay.
You're progressive, like that makes you malleable. And also you're not forcing your belief on other people. Right? People have different opinion, people have different reason why they do anything in life. So you just have to respect it, you don't have to like, oh wow, you're dumb, you still believe in that, and just talk down on people because now you believe differently, you think they should believe what you believe. That's not toughness. That's actually that's weakness. Toughness is, still, being resolute on your position, and and being open to, changes.
Yeah.
And also giving grace to other people.
Right.
That's toughness.
That's a very good description of toughness.
Right.
How do you handle criticism? Because I also think that part of our reaction as a people, is as a result of how we've been molded over time. So we talked about in the beginning of this podcast, we talked about how we were raised, people that are raised with tough love and those that are raised with soft love. I think that the reaction of this set of people, if they were to conduct a study on maybe these two people, the reaction of how people take criticism will also reflect on how they were raised. How do you take criticism?
So for me, if criticism is coming from a constructive angle,
yeah,
right, and and not destructive, if you want to criticize me, you have to be able to have strong fact to buttress your point, because I want to talk. Okay, why shouldn't I? Why is this that? Why are you saying this? Why is what I'm doing wrong? If you prove me wrong, I'm not too big to say, oh, yeah, you're right. You know what I'm saying? So, take for instance, when I was driving Uber today earlier, right? This young Chinese boy and his mom came in my car, and the guy was very talkative, like, wow, I kind of like his energy. Then I said, oh, the Willis Tower is the tallest building in America now, since the Twin Tower came down. And this boy is 9 years old. He's like, no. They built another
tower.
The tower. The one that came down 9/11, they built another one. So that's the tallest one, and there's another one, Central Park, something is the tallest one, and now the Willis Tower is the third. I'm like, oh wow, I never knew that. Oh, thank you. I just learned something new. So he was able to support his point. So criticism is coming from if it's coming from a place to educate me.
Yeah.
So I don't stay ignorant. But if it's coming from a place to prove a point, you don't know anything, man. I know something. You're going to brag over me that you just to hang that over me.
Yeah.
Then I won't succumb to that. I won't subscribe to that. I could say, yeah, I believe I could learn that, but you don't have to say it that way, and you have to change your, and I would probably like double down on your attitude, like, yeah, you're right, probably right, but your approach to criticizing my point is wrong, and you know I would take the criticism, but I would have something to say about your attitude.
Okay, well, yeah, that's fair enough, because
but if it's coming from a place to educate, like, oh, bro, this that your approach of it, yeah, like, oh yeah, thank you, bro, man, I really appreciate you. I just learned something new, because nobody knows it all.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause I just think that it comes from both ends, the way people give it and the way others receive it.
Right.
In this time and age that we are in, people criticize of course, for different things. Some are constructive and some are destructive, really.
Right.
And I would also say that sometimes those that are receiving criticism, even though it's constructive, they don't receive it well. And I'm saying this because it can be traced to how you've been molded. Sometimes you don't have the patience to try to sieve out a constructive from a destructive one. So, because I think it also depends on the person who is receiving the criticism, that will be able to even understand where the other person is coming from. So sometimes if you don't have the patience to distinguish between a constructive one and a destructive one, your reaction may come off as you are fighting what someone is saying.
Right. And also, like, as a person, if you're very confident in yourself, right, and you know that your level of intellectualism is not subpar, it's up there, right? And if someone like criticizes you because you're already confident in yourself, you don't go about them saying, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's doing." You receive it because you already know that you know who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And and not in comparison to who you're talking to, but you know who you are, and you're confident in your knowledge and
right.
And so your ego is not bruised. You just see it as an opportunity to actually even learn more stuff and improve on your wealth of knowledge. Like for me, like, I'm not bragging, like, I don't know it all, but I don't think I come across as someone who is like dumb. So if you tell me something from a very constructive angle, not to like hang it over my head and like, oh, I'm bragging, I would receive it very well. Yeah.
That makes sense.
But I know most Africans, oh my God, it's ego. When the Africans are hanging around, when I was in Chicago, it's about who has the more money, who's wearing the nice Jordans, and who looks the best. It's always just about that. And I'm looking at Africa like, why are you guys like this? Why can't you just have like a normal, when they're talking, right? Nobody can even talk about. Most things, when people talk about, maybe it's people I find myself around, mostly just, Barcelona, Arsenal. Nobody's all actually talking about our conditions in Africa. How are you going to get out of the misery? We're not in Africa. So we don't come here and look for girls to get married to and just stay here. You know what I'm saying?
You're right.
Nobody's actually like talking about things to, because when I'm thinking about Africa, I'm thinking collectively, not individual. If one person has money, and the rest of us, like, I want a collective growth.
Right.
And we can only grow collectively if we start thinking in, collectively. And sit down and talk about how, and come up with like a vision or a mission that looks like a plausible path.
Yeah.
To coming out of the misery we find ourselves. So when you talk about Arsenal and this Arsenal you're talking about, these are European clubs. They make millions from you even talking about them. Nobody's talking about Eyimba. Nobody's talking about, what is indigenous to Africa. We forget about that. So, and oftentimes when you talk to people, right, they feel like you know too much. You do, I know, I sabi too much, and it's just like, if you think I know, you know too much, just say something that makes sense. That can articulate our current reality and also a plausible pathway to come out of where we find ourselves. So yeah, if if criticism is constructive,
Yeah.
It's coming from a place where to like educate and to correct. Even if I don't believe in the Bible anymore, but the Bible says it's meant for correction, for what's that? The Bible is
For reproof.
for reproof and all,
correction.
yeah, for correction and all. If it's coming from a place like that where it's meant to build, it's meant to increase my knowledge, it's meant to, that's great. And I think everybody should accept such criticism. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think your perspective has been very, very interesting and enlightening too at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I the idea about this section is to expose the things that has changed in our time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are lots of things that have changed in our time, growing up and seeing things go a different way. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I brought this topic, to be able to expose what it means to where we're coming from in terms of whether we are losing our strength as a people,
Mm-hmm.
or whether we are becoming weak, and how we can transition and navigate what we have been passed on, what we've been given, and how we can easily pass it on to the next generation,
Right.
or to our own people in a way that will strike a balance between what we used to know and what's
Right.
is obtainable now.
In general, I think we're getting weaker and weaker as a people.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, look at the condition of how our people are living.
Right.
For me, to articulate the strength of a nation or a people, it has to show in how they're living. It has to show in their quality of life.
Yeah.
Okay, now, in this part of the world, right? See people are a lot more vulnerable amongst their community. People they confide in.
Yeah.
I've been around white people, young white men. I used to, when I was dating my ex, she's white, and I see how they're vulnerable, the way they relate to each other, right, and things they say to each other. I learned one or two things from them, right, and look at their quality of life,
Yeah.
way better than where we came from, right. So, if X plus Y equals 2, where X is America, Y is being vulnerable equals 2. And 2 is the quality of life. See how they're living. Maybe that's what is missing in our equation. You know what I'm saying? Maybe if we get more vulnerable and talk more and and like think deeper about our situation, because being vulnerable, like, it makes it's strength.
Yeah, that is the point.
It's strength, because
So
we
because
see it as
the
weakness.
vulnerability is for us.
Not everybody can do
It's
that.
weakness.
Yeah.
That's what we
But it's strength.
is weakness.
To be able to be vulnerable it takes a lot to be actually vulnerable.
Yes.
Even me, I'm vulnerable, but I'm getting there. I'm it's hard. But if we can have that introspection, like, maybe if we start doing something differently, maybe we can look at the Chinese, look at the society growing. They're a lot more vulnerable than we are.
Yeah.
Among their own community. It's not like you're vulnerable. You go to Mr. AB and start talking your story.
Right.
That's not. People you confide in, like, in a settings, and they don't judge you. They might not understand what's going on, but they respect it. And they don't use that to act towards you.
Right.
So maybe if we start rethinking what it means to be strong, or the idea of strength, and start approaching that differently,
In a different aspect, yes.
it could
restructure the way we think.
it could crystallize into something better and different
Yes.
in our society.
Yes.
You
I
know?
think that's the point. If we try to redefine what strength means,
Right.
what toughness means,
Mhm.
what being strong means, I think that's what we need to actually focus on.
We have to.
Because where we see these things from, the point of view is not. My fear is that if just a few people are trying so hard to let go of those things,
Yeah.
just a few,
Just a few.
other people are still modeling that path,
Right.
and going down every day, and then passing from their children, down, trying to mold you and be in a certain way. So it's just a few people that are on that path to unlearning those things and redefining those concepts and trying to see life in a different way.
Because what happens is that when Africans come here, especially Nigerians, they begin to judge. You know, look at his son, look at his acting, just talking his story, just you know, I mean, this society has its own problem. A lot of problems.
Yes,
don't get me
of
wrong.
course.
But instead of judging, you know, how about you take one or two things, and you know, and incorporate it into your own life.
Yeah.
Maybe it's what you need that can catapult you to the next level.
Yes.
Mentally, physically, you know, intellectually,
Yeah.
all ramifications. You know, so like I've been with Africans. Oh, we're better than these people. You know, why you're not better than anyone? And that the idea to even think you're better than the next man, it's wrong. You know, if you're a Christian, the Bible don't say you're better than anyone. You know, the culture might be different. The way things are done here might be different from how the way things are done in Africa, and it's okay. You know, oh, you got culture. You don't have culture. What culture do you have? You don't even worship. You don't even worship like your ancestors. You know, you don't even speak your language. You want to point fingers to, oh, they don't speak your language. What culture do you have? Are you going to cherry pick what culture means? And you know, and because you wake up in the morning and say, prostrate to your father, and like, good morning, sir. That means you have culture. What a problem! You know, it doesn't make sense. You know, so we as Africans, we've not been allowed to express ourselves from the day we came in contact with the European. Our life has never remained the same. They turned us upside down, inside out. They destroyed our society. I'm telling you, the boundaries of Africa as it is today was being drawn out in Berlin by the Europeans. You know, and before they drew out the boundaries, they've been coming and taking slaves.
So now, when you talked about when they came to affect our lives and everything, now, don't you think that because we already used to have our own values and the things we believed in and our own principles, and one of which is trying not to be vulnerable to anybody, right? Having strong will. That part, because whatever thing that was done in the past did not affect us. So do you think it's a good thing that we retain that part of us, that whatever thing they did, we're not able to affect who we are as a people? So why do you think that now it's okay to model that part of them?
So being vulnerable is not an exclusive behavior of the Europeans.
Okay.
You know, being vulnerable, even animals, you know, they have their ways of showing vulnerability to each other, right? So going back to being vulnerable it's not like we're trying to be like the Europeans.
Right.
You know, I think it's just trauma, you know, and living in a toxic environment can make your guts be up, and you don't know. So we went through the trauma of colonialism, the trauma of just living in abject poverty, where it's survival of the fittest, where, man, like if you get too vulnerable, like the next guy knows your weak point, they can use it against you, you know. So all those things has crystallized into the present day behaviors of Africans, you know. And to change our condition, you know, it's gonna take a lot, you know. It will take the intentionality to be able to identify in history what happened to us. What happened to Africans is not any different from what happens to the African Americans.
Oh yeah, definitely it's the same. You know, when I talk to them, I know that what they're dealing with is actual trauma.
Right.
And that's why sometimes I don't.
They know they're dealing with trauma, but you don't even know you have trauma though.
So that's the point. So
you think you're better because you have all this but
the truth remains that it's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
But you have trauma too. I have trauma.
So it's not the same. So when these people talk to you, you would know that it's coming from a place of pain. It's nothing compared to whatever thing that they have been through. Whatsoever thing we are going to.
You know why it's coming from a place of pain? Because they're self-aware. You and I are not self-aware. We think we oh, we have this culture, we have this, bro. We don't have God, we don't worship God the way we worship God.
Anyway, you know what I would say?
So
Just like someone who was maybe someone that was there during probably Biafra War or like the Civil War in Nigeria, right?
Right.
The pain of that person who witnessed the war, experienced it, it's not the same as someone who was told the story,
right,
and then probably experiencing the aftermath of the war, but was not really there when the war happened.
I agree.
Those two things are not the same, and that's exactly how I see these people. What they are passing through, or what they pass through and their experience, is from a place of pain, and they saw these things firsthand, right? You can't compare it to someone who has been told the story and who is just experiencing the aftermath of what had happened, or even the slavery, if we're talking about slavery right now, right? So it's not the same. So, but regardless of the stage or the extent of your experience, whether real time or later on in life, there is still some things that we need to unleash, we need to deal with.
Right.
Those traumas we need to overhaul
As a people.
as a people. Yeah, we
Right.
need to overhaul as a people.
Right.
And that's really, really important.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate that not everybody is going to have the opportunity to drop or to let go or to unlearn,
Right.
to come out from this path. Most people are still going to really be in this circle from generation to generation.
Yeah, and that's why one of the ways to curb some of these problems, or most of these problems, is from school. In the school curriculum, when those kids are young, there should be school psychologists where they are being asked what's going on. You talk to these kids, you evaluate these kids,
Yes.
and you provide skills at a young age, because it's easier to grow young men than to heal broken men, or something like that.
Yes, that which is
You
true.
know, so from that young age,
You
from
capture
the school
capture the
curriculum,
point.
you know, it's incorporated in the school system. So that way they, to a level, begin to see that result. When you educate them, and that in a sustained way for a period of maybe a generation or two, which is 60 years generation, right? You will see the result will transcend all across the board. It has to be a systematic way. Like our generation now, like we missed it already.
No, why would you say that?
We missed it already. You can't be unless you want to go into a real or in a way to, like your minds are formed
like I said,
and your subconscious,
like I said,
nobody is fully healed.
So yeah, so this can
deal
be,
with it.
yes, this
and
can
you make peace with it.
Right.
You
I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't mean that there is nothing we can contribute to make it better.
No, to contribute,
Right.
yeah. But for us to fully go back to
Now, nobody wants a perfect system. Nobody's saying that everybody's going to come perfect.
right.
But I think the focal point should be making the system better or making it better. Now you've talked about curriculum in school, trying to make sure that people are being mentally evaluated in school, and then I also think that family is important because, like I said, you will go to school, get all those advice, all those evaluation. You go back to the same system. If your home is toxic, if your home is not welcoming, if it's like that system that you're trying to run away from, there is nothing you will do that can change it.
Right.
So it's a
And one way government can make sure that at least when you have those policies in school with psychological evaluation, there's a psychologist talking to these kids and providing the necessary skills to be psychologically normal, grow up in a psychologically normal way.
Yeah.
At home, government should limit corporal punishment, where the parents can just start beating or punishing kids for being who they are. And the beauty of allowing kids be who they are, it's just having different personality traits in the house.
Yes.
This one is this one act this way, this one act the other way. You don't try to mold them to be the same. You understand? When you have different personality traits in the house, it makes it fun raising these kids.
Yeah.
Allowing them to be who they are. So when government enacts policies where you can't just you limit corporal punishment, and the kids can call on the government or call a number when you are not allowed, you are outstepping the bounds of what punishment should be like. Like status driven.
Yeah.
So that way the kids can be effective. So when those kids grow up and become parents, they know better because they were shaped by a different environment.
Right.
That's how that's sociology. You socially engineer society.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think we have leaders who are actually thinking that way.
Well.
Because this policy won't give you instantaneous results.
Yeah, of course.
But if
it's
it's
a long
sustained,
time. Yes.
for 2 generations, you have a different whole society.
That's true. That's true.
So
well, that's you've really given exposure to giving insights to this topic, and I really hope that that we as a people begin to, especially we that are aware of what we need to do to make things right.
Right.
So if we begin to try to unlearn some things and relearn, try to get a certain kind of perspective, and then before we are able to transfer those things to our own kids, I think it will also make sense, because by then we are also building a new generation that will keep taking those things from one place to another.
Right.
So yeah, I thank you for coming for this podcast.
Thanks for having me. And also your point of people should be progressive in thinking.
Yes, very
and
important.
not always think that, this is what was handed to me by my parents.
Yes.
But some of the things that were handed to you might be trauma. And other things, you have to be able to do the works to identify what is what.
Yeah.
So that you don't raise kids in a dysfunctional way.
Yes.
And it's bad for our society, because
Right.
family is the smallest unit of society.
Yes.
And the society is in a mess now because
the family is in a mess.
Is in dysfunction.
Right. Right.
So that way, if every family do the works and they take the job of being a parent very seriously, I think the society would be a better place.
Absolutely.
For everyone. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you.